Welcome to this web presentation on the IFRS Taxonomy. My name is Stephen Cooper, and I'm one of the members of the International Accounting Standards Board. Taxonomy is a term that is getting more attention with the ongoing development of technology. However, it's also a term that many feel is very technical and a concept that is hard to grasp. The purpose of this web presentation is to explain at a fairly high level what the IFRS Taxonomy is and how it is relevant. So before I start, I'd like to point out that the views expressed in this presentation are my own, and they don't necessarily represent the board or the IFRS Foundation. So you can see here what we're planning to look at, the background to the taxonomy, what it is, the benefits, how we develop the taxonomy, the due process that we go through, and then also some slides to explain how you can find out more and how you can get involved in the taxonomy's development. So by way of introduction, data consumption is clearly changing. I'm sure you all observe that. We read e-books, we shop online, we increasingly use technology to access information. There's an enormous amount of information, as you all know, out there. But coupled with this, financial reports are also increasingly going digital. The consumption of information, there are several factors that affect how easy it is to consume digital information. So the content, how that content is organized, and how the content is delivered. And the IASB is very well aware of this in its standard setting process. And as a result of that, it has organized a theme of better communication for the IASB's standard setting work plan. So better communication is all about work that we're doing on primary financial statements, the formatting, presentation of primary financial statements, work we're doing on the disclosure initiative about the content of the notes to the financial statements, how they're organized, how we can make them clear and improve the content. We also, as part of this better communication exercise, are working on the IFRS Taxonomy. And this is an important part of how information is delivered and an important part of our work on better communication. So what is the IFRS Taxonomy? In fact, what is a taxonomy in general? Because the IFRS Taxonomy is just one example of a taxonomy. So a taxonomy is a system for classifying something, for allowing information to be structured. And I think perhaps I can best illustrate this by using an example. And the example I'm going to look at is one of online shopping, which I'm sure is very familiar. So when we search online, when we shop online, we can search for products in specific categories. And this allows us to find the products we're most interested in. Once we've found the product we're interested in, we may be able to deep dive, such as, for instance, viewing a picture online, so we can look behind what the taxonomy has delivered. So, for example, assume I would like to buy some new item of clothing, and I don't just want any item, I want a particular piece, I want a specific color, specific size. So you can see in the diagram on the slide how a particular item of clothing is classified according to 5 different characteristics. Doing this detailed and specific searching is possible because of the use of taxonomy. So the online retailer has named and classified all the products it sells. For example, the retailer may have structured its products based upon the 5 items that I've specified here. There could be a whole number of other items that are used. In simple terms, a taxonomy is a system for classifying something. It allows information to be structured so that it can be easily consumed. So what about the IFRS Taxonomy itself? So the IFRS Taxonomy is a system for classifying IFRS reporting. It consists of elements that are used to tag information in the financial statements. In the previous slide, the element would be the specific description of the item of clothing. So it's red, its size, whatever. In the IFRS Taxonomy, it's the attributes of financial information that determine the elements that we're looking at. So the elements are organized within the IFRS taxonomy based upon the structure of the IFRS standards. So the taxonomy is very closely related to the standards that the IASB issues. An important thing to remember about the taxonomy, though, is that the taxonomy doesn't prescribe or provide guidance regarding the content or structure of IFRS financial statements. It's important to remember that it is the IFRS standards themselves that determine what is reported and how one structures IFRS financial statements. That's not the role of the taxonomy, that's the role of the standards. The taxonomy is to provide a representation of IFRS information in a series of elements, a series of tags, to enable then the digital reporting of financial information that has been prepared under IFRS. So how does it work then? Well, companies use the IFRS taxonomy to tag information in their financial reports. Each of the individual items of information, whether it's a figure in the primary financial statements or some information that's provided in the notes, will be tagged with their individual element name, their individual tag. Then the financial reports are filed electronically, and that enables computers to be able to identify, read, and extract the tagged information. By having that tagging for the items within the financial statements, it makes it then computer readable. This means that investors and others will be able to get timely, cost-effective, and accurate information electronically rather than simply by reading the PDF file or the hard copy financial statement. So what actually does an element, what does the taxonomy really look like? Well, here you can see that the top part of this slide provides an extract from, actually it's the IFRS Foundation's 2015 annual financial statements. You can see the list of current assets that appear in our accounts. The bottom part of the slide illustrates how the data highlighted in blue within the PDF document is structured using the IFRS taxonomy elements. The IFRS taxonomy element identifies the values as being cash and cash equivalents. That's the item, that's the asset that we've highlighted. And then the specific XBRL technical language is used to express the other information disclosed within the PDF document. So on this slide, we've demonstrated the use of XBRL references that are used to identify the financial reporting period and currency. So we have the name of the item, the amount, the period it relates to, and then the currency of that item. The structured data can now be used to directly download the values for cash and cash equivalents into the user's preferred format. This could be, for example, Excel or directly into a database. And when that information is downloaded, you will know exactly what it is, the currency of the amount, which period it relates to, etc. This process can be done quickly and in a cost-effective way. And it's not only possible to do it for a single company, but you can do it for a full universe of companies and periods that the particular user is interested in. So it's a much more efficient way of delivering content in an electronic format. So the IFRS taxonomy content. The IFRS taxonomy is made up of elements that come from two distinct sources. Firstly, the elements that directly match all the requirements in the standard. So perhaps it's best if I illustrate this with an example. Take our standard IAS 1 on the presentation of financial statements. This states that at a minimum, an entity shall disclose its cost of sales when providing an analysis by function of its expenses. So because of that, the IFRS taxonomy has an element to capture this disclosure requirement. So the element is cost of sales. However, companies also disclose information that's not explicitly required by IFRS standard. The IFRS taxonomy attempts to capture information that companies commonly disclose in addition to what's in the standards. And you can see this on the right-hand side of this slide where we talk about IFRS reporting practice. So, for example, in 2016, the IFRS Taxonomy team undertook an empirical analysis of financial statements of companies in the leisure industry. Based on this analysis, we are proposing to add 2 new taxonomy elements, namely cost of sales relating to occupancy services and the cost of sales relating to the sale of food and beverage. We found this breakdown of cost of sales to be commonly reported for hotels. So whilst IFRS standards only require one item cost of sales, assuming you're analyzing expenses by function, it is common in certain industries to find that broken down into more detail. And because those 2 elements that I mentioned are common practice, to use our phrase in that particular industry, the taxonomy team has identified these as additional elements that should be included within the IFRS taxonomy. Including reporting practice within the IFRS taxonomy supports the global, consistent structuring of information, and companies and regulators therefore don't need to add their own taxonomy elements, and this in turn aids the consumption of that information. So what are the benefits then of having an IFRS taxonomy and having information filed in electronic ways using that taxonomy? Well, it improves access to electronic IFRS information. Our mission is to develop IFRS standards that bring transparency, accountability, and efficiency to the financial markets around the world, and therefore providing investors and others with timely, cost-effective, accurate information in an electronic format contributes to that mission. We end up with more direct, more informative information. It reduces cost, particularly enabling investors and regulators to process and analyze data much faster. It also enables customization. Investors would be able to produce their own reports incorporating particular items that is of interest to them, and therefore facilitating their more detailed analysis. So moving on to how the IFRS Foundation develops the IFRS taxonomy. The development process is summarized here, and you'll notice that there's kind of 2 streams along here that run side by side, and this corresponds with an earlier slide where I mentioned about elements that relate to the IFRS standards and those which are derived from common practice. So you see on the top, a standard is issued or amended, and then on the bottom, the analysis of financial statements, which would then correspond to the 2 cost of sales items that I identified earlier. So just as with the standards development by the board, the development of the IFRS taxonomy follows a thorough due process that involves public consultation on proposed solutions, which is summarized by the diagram. The process is a bit different depending upon whether it's a taxonomy element that matches directly the IFRS standard requirements, so the top line, whether it's what we call common practice, as explained previously. So perhaps I'll take you through an example. Suppose an IFRS standard is developed, all of the requirements in that standard then have to be identified, and elements to match them are then developed. The board approves those developments before the proposed new elements to the taxonomy are then consulted on. We then publish a document for consultation, and then after that consultation has been complete and the comments have been analyzed, the taxonomy is finalized, factoring in any feedback that the board has received. And then at the end of the process, the board then approves it and it's published ready for companies to use. So that summarizes what the taxonomy is and how it's developed. How can you perhaps get more involved? We would certainly like to encourage people to engage with the taxonomy process, and there are several ways in which you could do that. Firstly, where can you find the taxonomy itself? Well, we have a website called IFRS. You need to register to access the information there, but the taxonomy is available there for free. It's also possible to register to receive email alerts about any new proposals, as you can see on this page. And on our website, there's a lot more information available, including various guides that help provide further information about the different parts of the IFRS taxonomy. Finally, on this slide, you can see where you can find information about current consultations and how you can then provide comments on those. You can also observe a meeting. We have meetings of the IFRS Taxonomy Consultative Group, our ITGC, and also the meetings of the International Accounting Standards Board, where we discuss and approve amendments to the IFRS Taxonomy. Members of the public can observe these meetings. You can go online, or indeed you can observe these meetings in person at the IFRS Foundation's London offices. Thank you for listening, and that's the end of this webcast on the IFRS Taxonomy.